Hi everybody, welcome back to Three Sisters Homestead. Today we're in the grow room. See lights behind me. We are going to be talking about tools, tips, and tricks for canning. I've been saying that I was going to make this video for a little while now, about 2 months, 3 months maybe. I had an injury, ended up having surgery on my shoulder, so I haven't really had the energy to really make a lot of videos recently. But I have about hour and 15 minutes to make a video for you guys about this real quick. I am going to a homesteading group at a local library at 4:30. I'm gonna pick my sister up at 4. So we're gonna go through this pretty quickly. I'm gonna try not to ramble on, but you guys know me by now. I can get talking. All right, so we're gonna start off with tools. The first tool on my list, these are not in any specific order or anything, it's just things that came to my mind and I put them into my memos and my notes in my phone, and then I copy pasted it, sent it to my email, printed it out. The first tool that I have listed on here is a multi-blade blender, and a multi-blade blender has a blade down at the bottom and one about halfway up the cup. This makes it so that when you're processing stuff, it's not creating an air pocket down here and sitting there and not getting blended. That's usually the issue that I find with the single bladed blenders. So multi-blade blender. Next one is a crock pot. So we have a, what's it called? A roaster oven, that's what it's called. A big roaster oven. You can put things in there overnight to start cooking them down, like tomatoes. That's usually how we do our tomato sauce. We'll get into that when we get into the tips and tricks. So a crock pot or a roaster oven. The next thing on the list is a stick blender. It has a detachable blade, so you only have to clean that, and it is stainless steel. So you can just go clean it off real quick instead of having to put all of your product into your blender, and it is much easier to clean up. But sometimes I still need a regular stand blender because I'm making pesto, like things like that, or a smoothie or something. But using a stick blender when you're making tomato sauce, you can just put it right into your pot, much easier than having to transfer it into a blender. Less mess to clean up and less spillage. Next thing is a canning kit. You can easily find this on Amazon or at Walmart, at Meijer's. I'm sure Kroger's, Scott's, Fred Meyer, places like that have them as well. Anywhere that you can find canning equipment, usually there is a canning kit with it. It comes with a canning funnel, a debubbler, a little stick that has a magnet on the end, and there's also a little crank thing that you can use to put your rings on, but I do not recommend using those because you're only supposed to put your rings on fingertip tight. Then the next thing I'll have on here is multiple stock pots. I have them stored in here where I do my seedlings because I do not have the space for these big stock pots in my kitchen cabinets. It can be kind of a hassle to find somewhere to store them, but having multiple stock pots, it makes things a lot easier because you can have one heating up as your water bath canner while you use the other one to cook your canning product. The next thing I have on here is a handheld mesh strainer. I use this when I am making stock or chicken broth or veggie stock, whatever. I use one of my stock pots, put everything in there, cover it with water, and then when it's done, after it's sat, I usually cook it about 8 hours, leave it sit there while I'm doing other stuff. I take a big bowl, put that little mesh strainer on top of my bowl, and then I take a measuring cup, scoop it out, pour it in there through that strainer, the little mesh strainer, instead of trying to take another big bowl and put a strainer in it and put it in there, and then you have to do it a couple times, and I think it's messier to do it that way. Yes, it is more time consuming to use the hand strainer, but I think you get a better product when you do that with the smaller mesh holes than with the bigger holes in a regular pasta strainer. Okay, the next thing is a veggie chopper. A veggie chopper, it has a little bowl on the bottom. It has this piece that clicks on the top, and then there is a little cutting tool in that piece that clicks on. And there's a lid that comes up like this. You put your veggies on that little cutting board, slam it shut, and it chops them, dices them all uniformly. Then you have a uniform chopped, diced product to go into your spaghetti sauce or your salsa, whatever you're making that day. Instead of hand chopping roughly, and they're all, different sizes. If you want something evenly chopped, get yourself a veggie chopper. They're wonderful. The next thing is a apple slicer core peeler. You can get an electric one. You can get one that attaches to your KitchenAid. We just have one that's hand crank. You stick your apple on there, or your pear, whatever it is you want to slice up. Put it on there, crank it. It's going to twist it and twist it and twist it, and it's going to go through this blade and then a peeler. It's going to peel, core, and slice it. And that is a lot less time consuming than having to use one of those little handheld slicers that does like 8 pieces. Because you still have to peel it then. You still have to peel it by hand as well. Then the next thing, 2 things that really go together. You want to have a throwaway cutting board, a specific cutting board, or use a paper plate for very hot peppers. Jalapenos, not so much. They're all right. They're not as hot as these peppers I'm talking about. I'm talking about like habaneros and Carolina Reapers. Our Sugar Rush peach peppers get pretty hot from us not watering them a lot. So peppers that are higher on the Scoville chart, you want to use a separate cutting board that is specifically for hot peppers. Or, like I said, they have throwaway ones, or just use a paper plate. Then you also want to wear gloves when you're dealing with hot peppers. Again, jalapenos, they can be kind of hot, but not as bad as something hotter, like I'm talking about, like the Carolina Reapers. But yes, wear gloves. Wear some plastic gloves, the nitrile gloves, latex gloves. There's a couple different kinds. Get you some gloves for the kitchen. Next thing, I guess this went along with the multi-blade blender, a food processor. We'll just say that goes along with the multi-blade blender. And then I have a spider. A spider is a utensil. It's kind of like a slotted spoon, but it is a metal utensil that it's basically just holes and has little wires in there. I will pop a picture in there because I can't describe that thing very well. It makes blanching so much easier because when you use just a regular serving spoon to pull them out, if there's no slots in it, that water is going to sit underneath that vegetable, that fruit that you just pulled out. And then when you're transferring it somewhere else, you're going to be putting hot water into your cool water, your ice bath, or you can drip the hot water on the floor. If your kids come running, you can splash some hot water on them. Not a good time. Or your dog runs under you, you splash hot water on them. Not a good time. So get yourself a spider. Makes things easier. Less mess. And then the last thing I have on here for tools is good sharp knives. Good sharp knives, it's going to make it easier when you're cutting tomatoes, because then you're not going to be, when you cut a tomato, they're really soft when they're nice and ripe. So when you cut it, if you don't have a sharp knife, it's just going to squish it. So if your knife is nice and sharp, it's going to slice right through it like butter. Now we are going to move on to tips and tricks. My first thing that I have listed on here is to clean and chop your veggies the day before. Some of you might not like that idea. You might think that they might get a little soggy or something overnight. I found that I don't like to chop my tomatoes the day before, but everything else still stays nice and crisp in the fridge, just waiting for me till the next day. Then the next thing is, this goes along, this is why I said a crock pot or a roaster oven. Let your tomatoes cook down overnight on medium. In my roaster oven, I have found that leaving it on about 200 is kind of the sweet spot for us, where it doesn't start to burn or get crusty around the edges. It just kind of heats them up, gets most of the juices out. When you do this, then you're not waiting when you're actually making your tomato sauce for that tomato sauce to then cook down, because I think it says to reduce, the recipe that we use, it says to reduce by 1/3, I believe. But if we do this process overnight instead of while we're actually making our product, it is less time consuming. You don't have to sit around waiting for it to cook down then. Hand in hand with the tomatoes, this one goes with it. It says freeze tomatoes instead of blanching them. Blanching them is a time consuming but effective way to peel the skin off of your tomatoes. But I have found, I got this idea from Becky from Acre Homestead. You take your tomatoes, score them, core them, and then put them into a bag, put them in the freezer, let them get rock solid, and then take them out, let them thaw out. Usually overnight is just fine. But I just take them frozen, put them in that roaster pan, let them cook down overnight. Wonderful. Freezing them, after they thaw out, the skins just slip right off. Just come right off. I just chop the top off instead of coring them and scoring them on the bottom. It works exactly the same. Okay, the next thing, make a list of the recipes before canning. That way you know every single item in that recipe that you need. You can make sure that you have it, or if you don't have it, you can go get it. I usually do this day before or a couple days before. That way I know that I have everything in the house for that project and I don't need to stop in the middle of the project and go get something. The next item says, make sure that you have enough lids. When I'm saying lids, I mean for when you're canning. You have your glass jar, and then you have this little disc lid that goes on top, and then you have the ring. Keep your rings. Do not toss the rings. Those are 100% reusable. But the lids, the actual lid with the seal on it, is not reusable per safe canning guidelines. So you need to make sure before you start your project that you have enough lids. That way, again, you're not having to stop and go get more. Okay, this is why I said have multiple stock pots. Heat your canner while you're making your recipe. So the recipe tells you that you want to put hot product into hot water, cold product into cold water. So if you only have one big pot and you're using it to water bath can, then you're also using it for cooking. By the time you are done cooking, you have to wash that pot, fill it up, get it heated up. Your product is going to be sitting there cooling down. So then you're going to have to put those in there with the cold water and let it all heat up together. But if you have two big stock pots, you can use one as your canner and have it heating up while you're making your product. And it's just less time consuming that way. Let's see. The next item says wash your jars the night before. So when we are canning at my parents' house, they have a dishwasher. Usually I have my sister the night before load up the dishwasher with jars, or an hour or so before I come over and get those jars cleaned, and then they're sitting in the hot dishwasher while they're drying in the drying cycle. That's when I come over and we start cooking. Or then if they're cooled down because she did it overnight, we put them back in the canner and let it heat up. Let the jars heat up with the canner. Again, that is a time-saving tip. Less time-consuming. Get your kids involved. If you have kids, or if you have nieces and nephews, you have grandbabies, you have younger siblings. Get my nieces and nephews involved a lot because I don't have kids of my own. So creating good memories with them, it's good quality time, good memories for them to look back on, and it keeps them out of trouble. The next thing I say is family or friends, or listen to a podcast, an audiobook, or music. Those things, if you're having family and friends help you, good conversation makes things go by faster. If you're listening to a podcast, book, or music, makes things go by faster. You just don't realize how much time is going by when you're listening to something or you're having good conversation. My next tip is utilize Facebook groups, Facebook pages, YouTube, blogs. There is so much free information online, guys. There are courses and classes that you can pay for, but my recommendation is don't pay for it if you can find it for free. There is a lot of quality, good information from people for free. There is a lot of things like what I'm going to later today. It's free from the library. Some libraries have like seed vaults and stuff. Go get involved with your community and get free good information where you can get it. Next thing is use tested and safe recipes. I will link the canning book that I have below. I will link a page that I've been utilizing below. Safe, tested recipes, guys. Don't make stuff up as you go. The next thing goes along with that. It says you can adjust your herbs, but not the amount of fruits, veggies, vinegar, or lemon juice. Don't try to adjust them. Make sure that you go by that. Lemon juice can be replaced with citric acid. I call her my sister-in-law. It's my brother's girlfriend, the mother of my nieces and nephews. Her name's Sabrina. You guys seen her a couple times. She is allergic to lemons. So I've started using citric acid to replace lemon juice, which you can do. I have it written down in my canning book on the inside of the cover. I will pop it in below a little text here to tell you what the amount is, because I'm not going to say it and be wrong. So I'll pop it in here. Next thing is save your veggie scraps and chicken, turkey carcasses, whichever, for making veggie stock, chicken broth, turkey broth. We also, the juice that cooks down in the roaster oven from the tomatoes, we are now keeping that to can that as well as a tomato juice. Take all your veggies and your chicken carcass, put it in your big stock pot, cover it with water, put a little bit of herbs, salt, pepper in there. Makes a great stock and broth. You can freeze that or you can can it. Just make sure that you're following safe recipes. Okay. And then that is it. The last thing on this list we already talked about is freezing your tomatoes instead of blanching them. So if there are any other tips or tricks that you guys have recommended, because like I said, this is just a list that I came up with off the top of my head. It is not a full everything list, follow this to the T. I'm sure I'm missing things. I'm sure that I forgot some things that we do. I typed this list out when I was at work when we had some downtime. So please comment below things that you guys do to help you prepare for a day of canning. So thank you guys for hanging out with me. I know this is kind of a longer video, but I hope you learned something today and that you guys can teach me something too. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.